everybody, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. On today's episode of the podcast / vlog, I'm going to be talking about two things. I'm going to be covering kind of what to expect this year from the channel, because I really started about 5 months ago working on it, and so since then I've learned a few things, and so I wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up on what's coming this year from the podcast, from the YouTube channel, from everything else. And then also I'm going to be talking, you can kind of see behind me, the plan is, and I apologize if it's windy, what I wanted to cover also today is the fact that you can see all this junk in my trunk, right? Like, the back of this thing is just chock full of stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I'm going to solve that problem, which is, as you've probably heard, I'm building my own rooftop tent. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm building my own versus just buying one. And I'm also going to show you guys, kind of give you an idea of how much room is going to be saved and kind of the benefits of having a rooftop tent. I'll also touch on some of the downsides of having a rooftop tent as well. So, if you're interested in building your own rooftop tent, if you're interested in purchasing a rooftop tent, if you're just curious about the difference between hammock, tent, rooftop tent, camping, I'm going to kind of touch on a little bit all of that in this episode. So let's get into it. All right, everybody, as you just heard on the intro a second ago out at the truck, on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a couple of things. One of those things is kind of what to expect this year from the podcast / vlog. And then the second thing is I'm going to touch a little bit on the DIY rooftop tent project, kind of what to expect from a content standpoint regarding that. And then that's going to kind of be episode 1 for season 2. So again, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that's back. I've been getting a lot of great comments from folks that enjoyed season 1. And again, a lot like you guys, I'm just a normal guy, right? Like, I'm not a professional vlogger or podcaster or anything like that. I'm just a guy that kind of enjoys it, enjoys sharing the content, making the content. I kind of feel that there's sort of a hole, particularly around budget-based overlanding, like most of these folks that, and good for them. I'm not a hater by any means. I'm very happy for them that they, have these super expensive rigs and all this great, rooftop tents that cost thousands of dollars and all that stuff. That's fantastic. I do feel, though, that that's sort of a dream for a lot of us, right? Like, it sounds better and it sounds more attainable than it may actually be for the majority of us, right? Like folks like me that have a full-time job, that are required to have client meetings and be on calls and things like that, can't just, I have a family, I can't just get up and walk out the door and leave and go on a 2-month sabbatical, to Moab or whatever. So that's kind of the focus for this year. I've kind of been doing that as my focus previously, but I think talking about it a little less. Like, I just was broke, and so that kind of how it came across, right? Like, that's kind of how my videos were made, was just very cheaply and based on reviewing very inexpensive gear. So I just wanted you to know that will continue, and intentionally so, right? Like, again, I don't want to be talking about a $1,000 GPS system, that no one is going to really use, right? That no one except the top echelon people, or the people that are like literally doing it and that's their career or their job, or they are big, huge YouTubers, or, they're making all that money, that they can afford that. I just feel like it doesn't apply to the rest of us. So again, on this season 2, there's going to be a lot of talk about budget-minded overlanding stuff. So everything from different types of trips to take, kind of ways to get around having to spend a bunch of money while you're taking those trips. Also budget-priced gear that's still good quality. So I'll be talking about some of that stuff. Again, a huge focus of this year, and something that I'm super excited about, is the DIY rooftop tent. So I'm really excited about that. I just feel like the DIY rooftop tent is going to be a super fun project, and it's going to be something that I feel like a lot of people could do, right? Like, again, I think we've all looked at those rooftop tents and been like, wow, that, James Baroud or that CVT or whatever they cost, $2,500, $3,500. Those are just amazing, and we really want them, right? Like, we all want them, but does it make sense, right? Like, on a $7,000 vehicle, does it make sense to slap a $2,500 rooftop tent to the top, So again,
there's definitely going to be a focus on that do-it-yourself rooftop tent. I will make that a separate series. I may add some bonus episodes or even have some dedicated episodes on the podcast talking about that. But I'm going to kind of try and keep it separate because I also don't want to alienate anybody that's used to just the good old-fashioned overlanding specific stuff, right? So other things to expect from the podcast/vlog this year. Again, I mentioned it on the last video. I've got this big honking mic here. I've got multiple cameras running. The reason for that is because I want to put even more work and effort into really improving the videos, improving the audio quality for you guys. You'll also start to notice that the podcast used to just be literally a translation of the YouTube video over to the podcast. Going forward, I've changed up intros and things like that to make them a little bit more user-friendly for the podcast, shorter, so it's not so long with the music that started at the beginning. So again, I want you guys to know that I am really thinking about you guys and what makes the content better for you guys and more interesting and saves you time and doesn't waste your time, right? So definitely be paying attention to that. You'll definitely see some changes regarding that. So yeah, that's focus on the listener watcher. I definitely want to be, continually mindful of that. And that's where I want you guys to communicate with me, right? As always, please comment on the YouTube videos. Please send me messages. Communicate via the social channels. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like, right? So yeah, in videos like this too, just like when I started this video, if you're watching on YouTube, it started out of the truck, right? So I want to get away from... And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And obviously, I'm in the studio right now. Studio, quote unquote. I'm in the studio right now. And I want to just get away from it just being me sitting in front of a wall, right? Like, the studio will continue. It will definitely be here. And they're in order to tie together the narratives and the different videos that I shoot, I'm going to have some studio stuff too. But I feel like, looking back at them and kind of being critical of myself, I feel like a lot of those videos and things last year took place in front of the wall here with not a lot of other B-roll and just, videos of trips and things like that. So just so you guys know, this year the plan is to get more and more and more B-roll. So here in a second, when I get into the DIY rooftop tent, I did take a number of shots of things that I'm going to be kind of describing and talking through while I play those shots too. So again, just trying to make things a little bit more interesting and make them something that you guys enjoy watching so that you'll watch more of it, right? Like, that's the idea, is I want you guys to enjoy the content. I want everybody to learn. I want to get the comments from you guys. I want to learn. I want to improve. And I just want to make better content for you guys. So be looking for that too. And also, I want to increase the focus for sure this year on DIY stuff. So I really enjoyed the drawer build. It's my favorite thing I've ever done to the truck. I feel like the rooftop tent is going to be right up there or even more of my favorite thing once we get that going. So I want to do more of that kind of stuff. I want to do more Xterra specific content, but I don't want to alienate you guys that don't have Xterras, right? So it will still be useful for everyone, regardless of your vehicle. But I want to give the Xterra people stuff. I want to give the non-Xterra people stuff. And I want to talk a little bit more this year about projects and do-it-yourself type stuff. Because again, budget-minded, right? Like, I don't want to talk about just expensive bought gear. I want to talk about ways to repurpose things, ways to create your own gear that will save you money that you could then spend on the stuff that you need to spend the stuff on, right? Like, there's certain things, for example, my tent that I've been using is a Coleman, and it's been a great tent. I've probably used it 40, 50 times. The zippers are finally giving up on that thing. My kids get in and out. They rip them open and closed. It's finally getting to the point where it won't even really zip up. That was a $50 tent. Right? So now, again, I'm building a rooftop tent, and part of that is because I've wiped out all of my equipment. My cot is getting worn out. Everything's getting worn out. So it's good timing from that standpoint. But there are certain things like a tent, like a sleeping bag, things like that where, it's kind of that cry once, what's the expression? Buy once, cry once, right? That's it. Buy once, cry once. So I kind of want to there's certain gear that you may have to do that on, and I want to kind of cover what I think that stuff is, and then I also want to cover the things that I think you could definitely get away with cheaping out on, right? So there'll be more of that kind of stuff. So yeah, just to wrap that whole, put a bow on that whole first bit here, bigger focus on Xterra stuff, bigger focus on budget-minded overlanding stuff, bigger focus on do-it-yourself stuff, big focus on the do-it-yourself rooftop tent this season. So be listening for more of that. Definitely comment, hop on the other channels and let me know if you have comments or you want to see something or there's something that I'm missing or if you have ideas. I'd love to hear from you guys. But so that kind of covers the podcast/vlog update. Want to keep it short. All right, so moving on to the second part of this podcast slash vlog, the do-it-yourself rooftop tent project, right? So again, I did want to touch on this just a little bit. I am going to throw up sort of some video here just to kind of show you guys out at the truck, walk you around it. I want to give you guys a good understanding of why I'm doing it, right? Like a lot of people, and I actually have done a ton of research, and it's been really interesting to read from a lot of people that had rooftop tents and actually went back to like hammock camping or back to tent camping. And a lot of them, what they said the reason was for them, the reason that they went back was because it was too difficult to get in and out of the tent, or they had to get up frequently during the night to go pee, and it was just so annoying to have to put your shoes on and climb down and go pee and climb back up and take your shoes off. And they said that it was, there's a lot of folks that had trouble with that they thought it was inconvenient. Sometimes they said that, the rooftop tents were just so difficult to set up. And by difficult, I'm not saying that they're, saying that they're building the whole thing or anything like that, but that, you have to undo the straps, and you have to throw off the vinyl cover, and then you have to pop it up, and then you have to lower the ladder. And so a lot of them were saying like throwing a tarp up and a hammock is easier than setting up my tent. And so a lot of the times they would get places and they would just decide to throw out a tent and not mess with the rooftop tent. Also, there is the leveling, right? So having to level the vehicle, folks that have difficulty with that or have a lot of spots that are really uneven where that's, more of a pain than it's worth. Those people I've kind of seen have said, no, I'm not going to do the rooftop tent. So that covers what people have said why not to do a rooftop tent, because in my mind, it kind of seems like a no-brainer. Like, I love the idea of a rooftop tent. I do agree, and I do think that if I had like a Smittybilt Overlander tent, which is what I've been looking at because they are a pretty good price. You can find used ones for around $500, which is pretty reasonable. So if you don't want to build your own rooftop tent, that would be a great option. However, it's not a clamshell, it's not a hard shell rooftop tent. It's the one that has a couple of clips on it that you undo, and then you have to pull that whole vinyl thing all the way over your truck and down the other side, and it hangs down the side, blocking the doors on the other side of your vehicle. And then you have to pop up the tent and, set up the awning, and there's a bunch of stuff you have to do. And it's really, I'm making it sound worse than it is. It's not bad. And if you have one of those tents, I've been looking at them. I really was interested in them. But there is setup, right? It's not as instantaneous as everyone makes rooftop tents seem, right? Like I think a lot of us think of rooftop tents as just the sort of the ones that just open straight up, right? The ones with the 4 shocks, and you just undo a couple of latches and it just raises up, right? Most of them are not like that. Most of the cheaper ones especially are not like that. Those are, thousands of dollars, those tents. So again, if you don't want to spend that kind of money on it, the type that I'm going to design, the type that I am designing, is sort of it should be very simple, and I'll start to share plans for it soon. And again, I'll probably just make a separate series specifically dedicated to the rooftop tent. But it is essentially going to be, I'm going to use a pre-existing tent is my plan, for a couple reasons. Reason 1, I don't have to sew anything. It's way easier. Reason 2, because it's already assembled, it's basically going to be waterproof, right? Like I'm essentially putting a tent in a box, basically. So by doing that, it just saves me a lot of engineering. It saves me a lot of time. Also, if I build it to the specs of this tent, and I'll put a link down below to the tent that I'm talking about, the one that I'm looking at, it's extremely inexpensive. It's about $38. It is easily replaceable, right? So that's the other thing is like versus having to buy the material and stitch the material and sew the material and then, hope that you don't ever get a rip or a tear or a burn or ashes land on it or something like that, and then you've got to replace the whole thing or re-stitch it or put a patch on it or whatever the case may be. My kind of plan is buy essentially a disposable tent, right? Something that's very inexpensive, get a year or 2 out of it, replace the tent, and make it as easy to do as possible. So again, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But so benefits of a rooftop tent. So we've talked about kind of the reasons not to get a rooftop tent. I've touched briefly on what my rooftop tent is going to be like. But I want to talk just in general about the benefits of a rooftop tent, not just the downsides, right? Having to get up in the middle of the night is kind of annoying. Having to set it up, kind of annoying. Again, I'm trying to beat those issues with engineering, right? I'm trying to design one that will be very easy to pop up. It's going to have air shocks on it. It'll open up. I literally will undo 2 latches and it'll go, and it will lift up and I will be set. And everything will be stored inside of it. And so that brings us to the positives of the rooftop tent. So for me, the reasons to do a rooftop tent are that I'm going to get a ton of interior space back in my car. And right here, I will cut to those videos that I mentioned showing you what all I keep in my truck day in and day out. What all's going to come out of the truck when the rooftop tent goes on. So the beautiful thing about it is that this goes away. So this is it's a 2-inch thick memory foam mattress. I'll put a link down below to it if you guys are interested. What I did was, this is actually a full size mattress topper, and I cut it exactly in half. So a full is 54 inches wide. So when I cut it in half, I got a 27-inch, 4-inch thick mat, basically. So my plan is just to use this in the rooftop tent. It will stay up there all the time. So, this thing, obviously, with it being memory foam, it's intended to sort of hold its shape and size. I mean, you can see that's like a whole person basically in my back seat of my truck that is going to be coming out. So that's one of the nice things. In addition to the memory foam mattress, of course, I've got a tent, and inside of my tent bag I also keep all my stakes, and I keep a broom, like a little hand broom usually, and I keep a ground tarp for it as well. So again, all of this comes out, and this thing is huge. I mean, again, as you can see how much room that thing takes, and it's actually a pretty small, pretty foldable tent. But that is still going to be one thing that I will never have to have in my truck again once the rooftop tent is added. So now, obviously, the toilet bucket and chairs will still have to go. So that's a chair, and then that's a folding aluminum Cabela's table. It's going to be close. I'm going to have to see when I do the math on everything. I may be able to get the table up in the tent. And then I'll have to think, is it worth it to have it out of the truck and, stored somewhere, but where I have to climb up and get it down, basically, right? So that's something I'll just have to think about. And then one final thing that is fairly significant in size, and also it's extremely rigid, so it's not even like a sleeping bag or something that I can, put in a compression sack and scrunch down, is the cot. So this is my Coleman cot. That is another thing. So, I mean, just from that, you can kind of see here, like, the memory foam mattress is coming out, the cot is coming out, the giant tent and tarp is coming out, and then a sleeping bag is coming out. So just that stuff right there. Now, this mat here is an extra mat that I brought for my kid the last time we went camping, but take that out here. Put that back there. So just that stuff right there, all of that is coming out. Tent, sleeping bag, memory foam, cot. With a rooftop tent, I don't have to carry any of that stuff. So that opens up a ton of room inside the vehicle. All right, so now that you've seen all the things that come out of the truck and become permanently housed in the rooftop tent, you can kind of see the advantages, right? So one, it gives me a ton more space for more gear, more food. It allows me to go on longer trips because now I don't have so much stuff. I mean, even for a 1 or 2 night trip, my vehicle was literally packed to the gills. Like, I couldn't see out the windows. It sucked to drive long distances because I couldn't even see if there was someone beside the truck. So it buys me a ton of space. So that is definitely one. So, it also improves my comfort because now I can see out of the truck better. I have less stuff in there. I don't have things falling over, or, my kids don't have stuff leaning over on them while they're riding in the truck. So it definitely does that. And then ease of setup too. So those things that I showed you that I took out of the truck, those all took a pretty good amount of effort to set up. I had to put a ground tarp down. I had to set up the tent on top of it. And I mean, I literally got the easiest tent. You take it out of the bag and it explodes open and you set it on top of the tarp. But even so, you still have to set that up. You set up the ground tarp, you set the tent up. Then I had to take the cot out, right? And it's all manual and it's a pain in the butt to set up. It's hard and it fights you, and I smack my hands all the time with those metal poles on the end. So now I don't have to set up a cot every night. I don't have to unroll my memory foam mattress. I don't have to take out my sleeping bag. I don't have to unroll my pillow. Like, all that stuff is already set up. So I literally undo 2 latches, push up, the gas struts take it, and boom, I've got a tent. I've got all my stuff in it. So as long as I've leveled the truck, as long as I'm, in a good spot and ready to go, which I'll have to remember that the first couple of times so that I'm not, sleeping at an angle all night, I will be good to go. I won't have to set that stuff up. So not only does it save me interior storage space and free up room for other stuff to take on longer trips, it also adds a ton of convenience, a ton of comfort. And then thirdly, it gives me some security. Now, I've never worried about this, but there have been multiple trips where like 10, 11 o'clock at night, I hear 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 coyotes in a giant pack moving around me and howling their heads off. Again, I've just drank a beer and gone to sleep and said, you know what, if they want to tear me up, then they're going to tear me up. There's not a whole lot I can do about it, right? But now I don't have to worry about that anymore, right? Now I'll be up above, I'll be up on the truck. Again, if I go to other states and things like that where there are bears or, other more dire concerns, then that will be even better. But, just to have that little bit of safety, that little bit of convenience. I've also got some pretty cool little things that I'm adding to the tent, which I'll get into in the tent building series, but things like a security camera, which sounds funny, but I'll show you it's repurposing something else, of course. But so things like that. So there's some kind of cool customizations that I plan to do to it to make it even more useful, even more secure, even more safe. And so, the benefits then of DIY. So I want to touch on that just a little bit. So that kind of tells you the benefits. We've talked about the benefits of a rooftop tent in general. Now I want to talk about the advantages of a DIY rooftop tent, right? So I've kind of done the math on it already. So let's go back to that number I used earlier. So a used Smittybilt rooftop tent, Overlander tent, go for about $500 to $600, depending on condition, whether it has an annex or not, can add $100, $150 to the thing. All that good stuff. New, they're about $750 to $850. The prices fluctuate pretty frequently, but about the cheapest I've seen it on Amazon is about $761, I think, maybe a couple months ago. But so even just going with that $500 number, right? So buying a used rooftop tent, $500, not a bad option, right? Again, I've been looking at it very heavily until I found out about this whole DIY rooftop tent and discovered that I could build essentially a clamshell, instant open, hard shell style rooftop tent that would be easier to open, easier to maintain, easier to waterproof, all that good stuff, right? For that, so again, I mentioned the tent, it's about $38. My estimations on the wood are probably about $100 worth of wood that I'm gonna have to buy. So call it $140 there. Most of the other stuff I have, right? Like I'm just going to reuse the stuff I was using in my tent. So then we got to throw in, there's hardware, there's some stuff for mounting, paint and stain for waterproofing, the hinge. I'm going to use a plastic forever hinge style thing. There'll be more info on that later. But so even with all that stuff, I'm anticipating somewhere in the ballpark of $250 to $300 max. Now, again, you could throw in there's other modifications that I want to make. I will give the prices of those things whenever I'm talking about the rooftop tent, but they're obviously optional, right? Like the security camera stuff, I'm repurposing a fishing camera. And I'll show you more. It sounds super crazy, I know, but it's battery powered. It has its own self-contained screen. So it checks a lot of those boxes, right? It's rechargeable, so I could just keep it recharged, and then I can see outside of the tent with it. So I'll go into that stuff later. But so I will give you guys bare bones breakdown of what it would cost to make this yourself. I'll share dimensions and things like that when I'm going through it. But there are going to be a ton of cost savings. Like I'm thinking maximum it's going to be about half of what a used Smittybilt rooftop tent would be. And I think it's going to be a heck of a lot nicer and a lot more user friendly. So again, I want to be able to use the thing. I want to be able to go out and go camping and get in it and use it and not have to be like, it's too much of a pain. And we got in after dark and it's, I'm not level and I can't find a good spot. So screw it. I'm just going to sleep in the truck. That's not my goal. My goal is get there quick and easy, pop that thing up and be in it and be sleeping. So again, that kind of touches on the DIY rooftop tent, talks about the whys of the rooftop tent in general, and then also why a DIY tent. So there's going to be a ton of great content coming around that. So again, I hope you guys are enjoying, your 2020 so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. But definitely post up in the comments if you're on YouTube. Post up on the social channels. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. I'd love ideas, honestly, because sometimes I do have to, do some brainstorming things to come up with ideas for podcasts and for the vlogs. So definitely, if you guys have things that you want to see or you want to hear about, if you have topics related to overlanding, definitely hit me up if you guys have ideas. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks again for watching. Thanks again for listening. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care.